What's good? How y'all doing? My name is Zachary Carroll, aka Pastor Z. Welcome to episode 4, I believe it is, of Apologetics Monday. Every week, I like to review, react, respond to a debate, argument against the Christian faith, the belief in God, the belief in Christ, the belief in the Bible. So I found a video where a famous left-wing TikToker who I guess is an atheist, or from what I've seen is an atheist, Joshua Joseph, goes against Matthew Knowles on the existence of God. Matthew Knowles is a political debater and Christian. I don't know much about him, but I saw this debate and I was like, you know what? This would be perfect for Apologetics Monday. So don't forget to get your free ebook. Link in the description. Let's get started.
Are you trying to prove it by saying, well, good and bad exist? That doesn't mean that your religious concept of sin exists. You would need to substantiate that first.
So this is a 2.5 hour video. So I didn't watch everything. Basically, they started talking about politics. I think they started talking about termination of pregnancy, and then that straight into consent. And I believe Matthew stated, I could be butchering this, that consent to go into a bar is the same thing as consenting to getting drunk. And the response from Joshua was that doesn't line up. And then Matthew's point was it gets you closer to sin. It's temptation. And then Joshua doesn't believe in sin. And that's what sparked this idea of where God comes up. So we're just kind of jumping in the middle of this. This is from Matthew Knowles' channel. So go check it out for the entire 2.5 hour video if you have time.
Well, right. Sin, or religion rather, is, as I said, just giving God what he deserves. That's what religion most
Religion is the thing that presupposes that God is a thing that you can give what
Well, it certainly
you
also
deserve.
presupposes that God exists.
Yeah,
But
so that's what I'm saying. It's like you can't say that
We should define religion as the Bible defined religion, being there for widows and orphans. But anyway.
you can't define religion as giving God what he will, but that's the whole thing. You're kind of sneaking the definition in without substantiating.
yes, religions orient themselves toward God. That's true. So if you're
So it's
if
a
you're an
belief
atheist,
system that orients itself towards a God, or
Right.
or tries to theorize about God or gods.
it acknowledges that God exists.
Yeah. Well, no. It's a belief that God does exist.
Yes,
you
it's
see
a-
what I
it's
mean
a-
there?
it's a true opinion.
I know that you see what I mean there because I know you're a smart guy. So I know that like your rhetorical strategies can be on point. But the thing is, if you're saying
Why do you
that,
think they're on point?
I think it's on point because a lot of people who
Bro, all of these podcasters, why they got to be crossing their legs like this? It's like you're not a podcaster until you sit on a leather-bound chair and cross your legs in front of a microphone.
are watching this who might not like me or might not be
Maybe they
too
do like you.
versed. Or maybe they do. But a lot of them who might not be too versed on like rhetorical strategies can see because they believe it's like, yeah, it's just acknowledging that God
Why
exists.
do you think my
But
rhetoric is persuasive in this case?
I think that
is it
you're-
perhaps because it's well reasoned.
No, it's not at all. I think it's
then why
because
is
of
it
the way
not
that you
persuasive?
say things. If you would let me finish explaining
Sure.
why I think it's on point. I think because when you just said it right there, you said it's acknowledging that God exists, right?
Yeah.
That's because it's a common sense statement to you and to your audience. If you say religion is acknowledging that God exists, that of course they're going to say, yeah, because I believe that God exists. And if you're religious, you acknowledge that God exists. But you kind of leaped past, which is why it's not reasonable or sound. You leap past the part where, wait, do we really know that a God exists? And if we do, how do we demonstrate?
Well, here's how we demonstrate. Things are in motion, right? We're in motion. You and I are in motion.
Yes,
The
physics.
Earth is in motion. The stars are in motion. The galaxies are in motion. Things in motion do not put themselves into motion. So, like for instance, if I had a ball here, I could take this ball and I could throw it at another ball on that desk over there.
Well,
and then that ball, this ball that was moving that I threw, would hit the other ball, and that ball would fall down on the ground. It would roll, and that ball would maybe roll over, I don't know, another little tiny ball on the ground, and it would keep. You would see things continue to move as a consequence of those actions. So we can go back and you say, well, Michael, how did you start moving? And I'll tell you how I started moving, because my mother and father loved each other one night, and they created me. And how did that? And you can go back through all of these actions that caused movement. But ultimately, you're going to have to come to an unmoved mover,
first cause,
who is God.
So,
or no, you could actually. So
I'll let him respond. But this is basically the uncaused first cause argument, which means that everything in nature, everything in life, according to science, according to evidence, according to what we see and observe and take notes on, has a cause. I'm here because my parents, like he said, had sex, and now I'm here. Okay, this desk is here, this camera is here, this computer, this laptop, all the stuff here was created by something. It didn't just appear out of nothing. You can't get something from nothing. That's basically logically true. How can something come from nothing? And since we are surrounded by a whole bunch of somethings, it came from something else. Well, the problem with that is if you don't believe in a God that does not need to be created, isn't created, and creates everything else, then you're going to have to account for why everything is here. Where did everything come from? And even the Big Bang, where did the material and the matter that clashed together to create the Big Bang, where did that come from? So that is one argument for the existence of God. My favorite argument is the fine-tuning argument, all right? And way smarter apologists, men, pastors than me, articulate this a lot better. But basically, when you study astrophysics, quantum mechanics, thermodynamics, physics itself, biology, everything in science, all the sciences, when you really study them, you are amazed about how fine-tuned everything is. Did you know that the Earth is exactly the right amount of distance from the sun down to the infinitesimal measurement to promote life? If the Earth were any closer to the sun, we'd burn up. We would not burn to a crisp, but the temperature on the Earth would be too high to promote the existence of life. If we were too far away from the sun, then we would freeze. It would be too cold. So right where the Earth is and the rotation and the position in the galaxy and the solar system, everything is exactly how it's supposed to be in order to promote life and intelligent life and complex organisms. So when you look how fine-tuned, which is the phrase, fine-tuned life is, you would need to have more faith to believe all that happened randomly out of nowhere than to believe there is an intelligent designer. There is a designer, okay? So to me, that's the best argument. Well, that's the argument that appeals to me the most, because in God's, I think this is special revelation or general revelation, apologies, one of the two, where you look around in nature and you observe how beautiful and how perfect everything is created to do what it does. How the body is perfect, is perfectly designed to do what it needs to do to sustain its own life. And animals and even evolution, you see how species adapted over time to do what they need to do more effectively. It's a beautiful structure and system. And it just would require more faith to believe that that just happened randomly than to believe something designed it. So that is one of the proofs of God. Now, one thing I think he's going to harp on, Josh, is the idea of, can you demonstrate? Can you demonstrate the existence of God? Okay, so he wants specific evidence, and he wants that evidence shown in a specific way. When you get into these type of discussions, you need to stop and say, okay, you want it to be demonstrated. You want evidence. Explain to me exactly what type of evidence would suffice for you. What evidence do you need? Because you can give them evidence, you can give them an argument out of logic, but it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough.
It could be an unmoved mover. It could be that there's a finite amount. It reduces by finite amounts, the amount of movement. So in that ball analogy, when you throw the ball and it hits another ball, it would be slowing down because of the force of friction.
Which the universe is. I believe all of the science shows that the universe is slowing down from expanding. The universe is expanding from one point. A lot of people say that's the Big Bang and such. But it has been progressively getting larger and expanding. But that progression, that expansion is slowing down. It's slowing down, so that means eventually it's going to run out of energy to continue expanding. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a uncaused first cause.
So it could be something that was moving, or maybe has the potential to be moved that just hasn't been actualized yet. It doesn't need to be an unmovable mover. And if it
No,
is
I'm not saying. I'm saying the unmoved mover is at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm saying it doesn't. Yeah, I'm saying the beginning doesn't need to be an unmoved mover. And if it is, if it is, and we're bringing it back to a God perspective, then if God is the same today, tomorrow, always, and is the unmoved mover, then what does prayer do? Think about it. If God is changing their mind about something, not changing their mind, but say I pray to God about something, right? I want him to fulfill something for me. I want him to make my water into wine right here. Let's say that I pray to God for that. Right? He'd have to do something that he wasn't doing already in order to make that happen.
Well, but God
he'd have to answer my prayer, correct?
But if God were to exist, God would be the creator of all things, by definition.
Yeah.
So God would create not only space, but time. Right? So God would necessarily be outside of space and outside of time.
Oh, he wouldn't necessarily. He could.
He would.
Again, we're talking
about... If he's the maker of all things, then he made time.
No, well, I mean, if he's the maker of all things, he could make time, but he could also make himself subject to time because, again, this is the power of a God we're talking about. We're operating on the framework that as we...
So this is the operation of... anytime people use God in a sentence, it's easy to just exaggerate the concept. So God could do anything. God could make a squared circle. God could make an apple red God could make my hat red and not red at the same time. At that point, we're not even having a discussion. You got to be careful of going into those traps because it kind of inches towards you lose yourself in the discussion. What are we really talking about? We're talking about the existence of God. And Josh keeps going into different things. Now, one good thing he did say was about prayer. What I see him saying is, what's the point of prayer if God is in control and controls and does everything? Okay. Well, number one, God doesn't control everything. He may know something's going to happen because he is, as Matthew Knowles is about to say, he's outside of time. So God is in the future, present, and in the past at the same time. So time is not linear for him. Because it wouldn't make sense that he creates something that he is bound by. I mean, then that would be you would be kind of stupid. That'd be like you creating your own prison, or you creating a room and then you forgetting to put yourself outside of the room before you close the door. I mean, that's like an idiot would do that. not someone that's all knowing and all powerful. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, it may be a logically sound sentence, but it doesn't make, like, is it reasonable to think that something that is all powerful, all knowing would create his own prison that he therefore can't escape? Because he could bound himself into time, which he did through Christ, where Christ put on, God put on human flesh, came down, lived for 33 years. He consistently said, it's not my right time. It's not the right time and all this stuff. So God did do that. He did subject himself to the operation of time, but he is not restricted by time. So that's number one. Number two, God doesn't control everything. He could, but he doesn't. Okay? We have free will. God may know the color of the shirt you're about to put on, but does that mean you therefore don't have a choice? Like if I know a friend of mine likes cake and I know exactly what type of cake they like, so that if I go pick up the cake and present it to them at a time that they're hungry or whatever, I mean, I pretty much know they're going to have the cake. But does that mean they no longer have a choice to have the cake? Another example that Dr. Frank Turek uses is the sun. I know the sun's going to come up tomorrow, but does that mean that I'm causing it to come up tomorrow, or I'm making it come up tomorrow? No. Just because you see something, observe something, know something, or seen it before doesn't mean you are responsible for that thing. Again, if God were responsible for all of our actions, if God were responsible for everything we do, then we no longer have free will, and God is not all loving. He wouldn't be all loving. But that would be that is a fair response.
We understand time.
Well,
the thing that has to create time has to be outside of it. But like I was saying,
God does enter into time in the incarnation.
Yeah, but like
you've arrived at an important distinction between
hold on.
Christianity and Islam.
Before we get to the distinction, I want to press down on the fact that if God has created this water right here, this water currently is not wine. It doesn't matter at which point he decides to make it wine, he has to decide to make it wine. That is, in a sense, the unmoved mover moving. Because you have to be in a state of mind to, okay, I made this is what.
He's conflating the two things. He is conflating a bunch of different issues. We're not saying that God doesn't move. He just wasn't created. We're talking about a temporal distinction, not a present dilemma that God doesn't himself move. God doesn't make decisions. God doesn't operate. He doesn't act. He is painting God as like a statue that always has been, always will be. And therefore, if the statue moves, it is therefore no longer a statue and something totally different. So I don't really know where this is going.
Water. I now want this to be wine. That is you making a decision. You are changing your mind about something.
Well, yeah,
if that's the case, then God has to be a moved mover, because you cannot say that, oh, well, you know what, he's just an unmoved mover, but I'm going to pray to him and he's going to do something for me that he hasn't already done, because he has to change something about himself in order to do that thing.
Well, our lives unfold in history, and the way to understand God's relationship to history is through a concept of providence. Christianity is especially an historical understanding of God, because God takes on human flesh in the incarnation and then lives for 33 years and then is crucified, and then on the third day rises again from the dead, and then he's on earth for 40 days, and then he ascends up into heaven and sends the Holy.
Say the name. Dang, bro. I'm playing. I'm not playing. Say the name Jesus, the incarnation. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Mr. 1.72 million subscribers. I'm not saying that he's not willing to say the name. I see Daily Wire. I think this guy's a part of the Daily Wire. Say the name Jesus. Say the name. I had never seen somebody describe Jesus to a T without saying his name. There's power in the name. And I know sometimes it's scary to say the name Jesus. I'm thinking about certain merchandise to sell, and I'm having all these ideas. And even I am seeing the distinction between if I just say God versus if I say Jesus. Jesus is combative. God allows people to hop on. Everybody can dip into that pot because everybody knows God. Everybody says they love God. It's easier to say you love God than it is to say you love Jesus. But God is not revealed unless it is through Jesus. So anyway, that just came out of nowhere. I mean, just say the name.
Holy Spirit to his church, which is the visible expression of God's kingdom here on earth. So I'm with you in God's role in history, but the error you've made is that you have forced God to be subject to time before God made time.
No, I'm saying, but again, this is assuming that he did any of those things, but I'm saying, how do you know that he couldn't have made himself subject to that time? How do we know that
He
it's
did.
without,
God-
how do we
God
know that
did.
it's outside of the possibility of a God to
Because
both create
God
time
has to come-
and create himself in the time? How do we know that
he
one
does that
has
in
to
the incarnation.
precede?
He
How
does
do we
that.
know that one has to precede another if we're operating on the framework of God?
Because the creator has to precede the created.
Yeah, but
And
that's a-
space-time
well,
is
okay.
created. It's part of the physical creation.
Well, does it have to? Again, we're talking about God here.
Yeah.
If I create something, I have to precede that thing. If God creates something, we don't know what God can do. We're here talking about abortion and life and everything in our aspect. Apparently, there are angels and everything that are subject to a completely different realm when it comes to life and how they perceive it.
We're all
So,
subject to God's sovereignty.
no, I know. I'm saying, yeah, I mean, of course, but I'm saying that for all we know, life could be created in a billion different ways. It doesn't even just have to be the way we came about. If we have angels, we have other things up in a different realm in heaven.
Don't get
That's
into-
life.
Please
that
don't
is,
get into the aliens.
no, I'm saying that's life, but it's subject to a completely different subsect of rules. So we're saying the way we internalize it is, well, obviously something has to precede this other thing, has to precede this other thing, has to precede this other thing. That not only does not have to be the case with a God, even if that is the case, all it could imply is that there could be various things. It could gradually decrease. It doesn't have to be a singularity. It could be a string of things that are kind of gradually going about. It doesn't even have to. It could be an infinite
Yeah, things
regress.
develop in history.
Yeah,
of
it could
course.
be an infinite regress for all we care. We don't know.
It can't be that.
How? Why can't it not?
Because there has to be an unmoved mover. Or I'll give you let's say
So,
if this
but,
doesn't
okay, so
persuade you.
if we're looking at change, right? If we're talking about an unmoved mover or whatever, how is it that
y'all lost?
change is
'Cause
just
I am.
conceptualized as just something proceeding after another, right? Change could be a change in color, a change in property of something, right?
Yeah.
We could say that something created something or whatever, and it wasn't even necessarily just a progression of it. It just kind of shifted in color, or it gradually decreases, or any of the above possibilities, because we're talking about a God here. For you to assume that because one thing must cause another, must cause another, must cause another, and we can't have
I'm
it
just
go
saying
on
they did.
forever.
I'm just saying it. Yeah, they
How do you
this
know
happened
that-
now just by definition has followed the thing that immediately preceded it.
Yeah,
Right.
in our world, yes. So I'm saying
yeah.
if we're working within the scope of a God, we have no idea what laws or
Well, we do because we're
physical
made in the image and likeness of God. That's how we can
to your
reason.
belief.
Well, but
So you can't say that, well, I know this property about God, and God definitely has this property because I'm made in the image of God, and this is how it works.
How do you-
But you're presupposing that God even exists in the first.
how do you know anything?
How do I know anything? I usually analyze I think the basis for knowing things is subject to evidence. So basically,
This is like, I'm not trying to be mean, really not. But Josh sounds like lawyers right out of law school. And listen, I used to sound like that. I used to sound like that, and my boss, my mentors used to always. Thankfully, God has put me in with people that have been around, that know how things go, because you know he sounds smart, like he done read some books, but he's not making linear arguments. Like lawyers fresh out of law school got all the confidence in the world. They believe they're on top of the world. They've had 3 years of people just glorifying their intelligence or being in battlegrounds of intelligence, answering questions, and they graduated and they passed the bar, and they feel like they're the smartest people on earth. And then they get into a job that's very specialized and on a specific topic, and then you talk to them about that topic, and they be bringing in all this other stuff that has no relevance whatsoever to what we're dealing with presently, but they use big words. they use big words. I remember this was a few years ago. I was talking to this one young lady, and she had just graduated law school, and she was just, I mean, she was confident, I'll tell you. But it was, I don't even remember what she was saying, because she really wasn't saying anything. And I could see that. I think that was when I woke up like, oh, I hope I never sounded like this. I probably did, but I wasn't making any sense. And I've been on my job, and my boss had to be like, stop, stop, stop. Because you're just not making any sense. You're going from here to there, and it's like we have to argue in a straight line. You cannot argue all like this, or else you're not going to go anywhere. But this could be a good teaching moment.
When I say I know that I'm like here, right? It's not like I pulled out a bunch of dictionaries and I'm like, well, what is the definition of here? It's a known fact about the world that people exist, and I'm
How do you know
experiencing
that?
a conscious. Because we can see that. We can observe.
How do you
people, we
know
can-
that what you're seeing is real and not just a hallucination?
That's a big question. I don't think you truly can know that. I think I can know with a
But you're
fair
very
degree.
confident in your opinions.
I think
But,
that,
but you just said you're not confident that you
and I'm
know
also
anything at all.
confident in the things that I don't know. I think it's confidence being able to say when you don't know a thing. I think that
But what you've just said is you don't know for certain that you know anything at all.
I don't think you can know anything for certain.
Oh, well, I
am
think you
reasonably
can.
certain that you cannot know everything for certain.
Well, of course not. But I'm not asking if you can know everything. I'm asking if you can know anything.
Anything for certain. You can know it to a degree of certainty. I think you can get infinitely close to like that 100. You can get 99.999 depending
Okay,
on
how
how
can
much
you get that
evidence
close? How can you get that close?
evidence?
How do you know that you can rely on the evidence that you're seeing?
Well, I think that knowing that I can rely on the evidence that I'm seeing, I can always like see evidence that leads me astray, but it's a process of like mental reasoning that you can see various things that lead up or that but give good warrant to believing a certain proposition.
But how?
That
So I think that's a good stopping point. If you want to watch the rest of it, go ahead and go to this channel. It's clear to me that this is going to be a teaching moment, which is good when you are talking to someone younger, someone who, we all were that age and believe we know it all and got it all figured out. You just have to teach. And the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians, 2 Timothy 22, I believe it's 26, is that a servant of the Lord, a servant of God should not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, and giving opponents gentle instruction, which is what, I don't know Michael Knowles. I don't know him that well, but that's what I'm seeing right here, which is what I would do or try to do in that, because sometimes when people say certain things, I just be like, that's so dumb. And I lose my anyway. So, yeah, so he's able to teach. He's teaching here, and that's probably going to be for the next hour and 15 minutes. So, when you are talking to people, number one, you need to be learned yourself and study yourself. This helps you maintain a calm demeanor. When you've run across all these arguments, when you have Study the scriptures for yourself. When you have a firm understanding of where you are in this grander scheme of knowledge, then you can help somebody else learn and make the decision on their own. Because that's what Joshua's going to have to do. Because now, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to really follow what he's saying because he keeps saying different things. But again, this was about 10 minutes in a 2.5 hour interview. So I think that's good for an Apologetics Monday stream. Don't forget to like this stream, comment what you thought down below. I'd love to dialogue with you down in the comments. Don't forget to get your free ebook at the link in the description. It is a 31-day devotional guide to help you apply the book of Proverbs to your life in only 1 month. I'm sure you're going to love it. Go ahead and get that free book down below. My name is Zachary Carroll, aka Pastor Z. Y'all be cool.